Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up showtime. Liverpool are back in Champions League action this week with a Wednesday night game at home to Red Star Belgrade. And all things considered, this is probably a must-win game when you think about what happened away to Napoli last time out in the Champions League. Obviously, the win against PSG was absolutely massive. It was crucial to get those 3 points, especially when you consider how the standings in the group are decided on, I think it's head-to-head, before they're decided on goal difference. So it's incredibly important that Liverpool did get one over PSG there. But on the flip side, the fact that we lost to Napoli could end up costing us later on in the campaign if we're not careful. So I think with this double-header against Red Star Belgrade, especially with the home game being first and the fact that PSG and Napoli will play each other twice within that space of time, this is a game that Liverpool just have to get 3 points in, and I think quite importantly, get 3 points pretty comfortably as well, because I think when I look at this game, I think about it in a kind of similar context to the one against Maribor at a very similar time last season, where we were having similar problems at that point in the season as to what we are having at the moment, where we just weren't scoring that many goals, and it did feel like our attack wasn't quite clicking, and whenever it did, the final shot just wasn't there, the finish wasn't quite there, and we'd have games where we drop points and we'd let results go because we just weren't finishing off our chances. Obviously, it's slightly different this time out because it's more about the actual creation of those chances in the first place rather than the attacking players' ability to actually finish them off. But I think this is an absolutely fantastic opportunity for Liverpool, not just to get all of those players out on the pitch, you know, get our star forwards all out at the same time, but try and get a game where all of them score and some of them even get braces or even hat-tricks, just to kind of try and get their confidence up and get them back and firing so we can really get going from an attacking perspective this season. So team news going into the game, there's a little bit of injury stuff going on. I think Naby Keita is expected to still be out. It's looking like he's going to have something like a 2-week layoff after the international break, so I certainly don't think he'll be starting this game. Obviously, both Jordan Henderson and Adam Lallana came off against Huddersfield with small knocks. Henderson came off at half-time, and, you know, it sounds like it's nothing too serious. Jurgen Klopp said in his press conference after the game that he's not expecting anything terrible, and it was really more of a precautionary thing to take him off. And I think it's a similar thing with Adam Lallana, where he was feeling cramp in both of his calves, so Jurgen Klopp just decided to take him off and give him a rest for the last 15 minutes. So I don't think those players are necessarily ruled out for this game, but I think given they took knocks and we've got plenty of other players who could seize that opportunity in midfield, I don't see why we'd risk players that came off with small injuries at the weekend, especially with this game coming so soon after on Wednesday night and a pretty packed schedule afterwards, with the game against Cardiff next weekend, then Arsenal the weekend after that, and of course the away game against Red Star to come. Apart from that, I think there's certainly a possibility of a comeback for Sadio Mane. I mean, it never really sounded like he was going to be ruled out for an extended period of time when he had this surgery on that hand injury that he picked up on international break. I mean, to be honest, I don't think any of us can really see why a player would miss games for a hand injury, but you know what? Fair enough, but by the sounds of it, it was only the Huddersfield game he was going to miss, so there's certainly the possibility that he could come back for this game. Apart from that, I think just in terms of general rotation, I certainly think we will see a little bit more of that on Wednesday night, because I think that is going to start to become the norm between now and the end of the Christmas period, because that is just how Jurgen Klopp gets around the problems that arise later on in the season, where fatigue and injuries do start to pile up if you're not careful. So I think we will start to see rotation, but I think we will certainly still see a stronger side, and potentially a stronger side than the one that played against Huddersfield on Saturday night. So as for the actual starting 11, I think it's going to be Alisson Becker in goal. No qualms there. You know, he's just absolutely fantastic, isn't he? And hopefully he gets another clean sheet to add to his already blossoming collection at Liverpool Football Club. In front of him, I think the centre-back pairing is probably going to be Joe Gomez and Virgil van Dijk, although I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if we throw maybe Joel Matip in there alongside Joe Gomez, just because, you know, Virgil van Dijk played on the international break and then obviously played at the weekend. Same with Dejan Lovren as well. And I think Jurgen Klopp is just experimenting to see how much he can rotate that back line, because obviously, like I said, rotation is going to start to become a thing. But when a back line performs as well as ours has already so far this season, and when a partnership like that Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez one looks so brilliant, you're always tempted to actually not break it up and stay with it no matter how many games you have. So I feel like Jurgen Klopp is just testing the waters a little bit at the moment and seeing how much he can tinker with his back four before it starts to cause problems. So I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if we did see changes, but I think given the serious nature of the game and the severity of the fact that we have to get those 3 points, I certainly wouldn't be surprised if we just went all out and put Gomez and Van Dijk alongside each other. And then the fullbacks, I think, are going to be Trent Alexander-Arnold coming back in for his first start since the game against Napoli, I believe it was, and then Andrew Robertson on the other side. There are obviously shouts for Moreno because Robertson has already basically played every game so far this season, I think, apart from the League Cup game against Chelsea, and he has of course played every game for Scotland in the international breaks as well, so the lad is going to need a rest at some point. But again, it just comes down to how important this game is and how much not only do we need to get 3 points, but really we want to be absolutely thrashing the living daylights out of Red Star Belgrade. So I think you go with Robertson in this game and then maybe go with Moreno at the weekend against Cardiff, and then, you know, you've got a week's break there where there isn't a midweek match because we got knocked out of the League Cup, where the players can pick up a little bit of a rest time there as well. So I think you go with that full strength defence, partially also because I think having those attacking fullbacks will be incredibly important in terms of keeping a Red Star Belgrade under the cosh. I think it's something we were slightly lacking against Huddersfield, as good as Joe Gomez was down that right-hand side, and, you know, as good as Robertson was, I think he was slightly hampered by the fact he had Lallana trying to help him out on that left-hand side, which wasn't really working. I think that did hamper us against Huddersfield, that we were only really able of attacking through the middle through players like Shaqiri and Sturridge, because we just weren't getting any options out wide. So I think it's so important that we have those two attacking fullbacks. And then the midfield, I think we are finally going to see another start for Fabinho in this game. I think it just makes sense with Jordan Henderson possibly unavailable or being sort of dropped out the side for a precautionary measure, and the same with Adam Lallana. I think it just makes so much sense to put Fabinho in here, and obviously I feel like this is the patch of games where we're going to start to see him a little bit more, where Jurgen Klopp's going to look to actually start integrating him into the first 11 with a view to maybe around Christmas time being able to play him on a regular basis in that number 6 role. And I think with it being a European match obviously and not a Premier League match, the pace should hopefully just be a little bit slower, and being at home he hopefully won't come under too much pressure, especially with it being against Red Star Belgrade as well. And obviously if we do play Gomez and Van Dijk and then Alisson behind him, any mistake that he makes is not going to be the end of the world. You know, if he makes a minor cock-up here or there, you expect the players behind him or even the players alongside him in midfield will be there to mop up after him. So I feel like this will be a great game for Fabinho to play. I think if he doesn't play this one and then doesn't play against Cardiff, then I would be worried about what's going on in the training ground and whether or not Jurgen Klopp doesn't quite like what he's seen from Fabinho so far. But the way he's talked about Fabinho and the way he's constantly said he's nearly ready, he's nearly ready, he's nearly there, he's nearly ready to start a game, I feel like this has to be the game where you give Fabinho a start, and then alongside him I think you go with Gini Wijnaldum and James Milner, because, you know, there's maybe a shout for Xherdan Shaqiri in there, but I'd save him to play in the midfield again against Cardiff, because I feel like using him as an attacking midfielder in those Premier League games is just a really good way to get around the fact that sometimes the attack misfires ever so slightly, and he obviously proved crucial in that game against Huddersfield where he gets the assist, he sets up the goal that ends up winning Liverpool the game. So I think you go with Fabinho in midfield, you then give Wijnaldum and Milner that licence to go forward, and then the front three, I think you just go with the best options we have got. You go with Salah, Firmino and Mane. You know, Salah obviously played at the weekend, but I think he should be fine, and then maybe he gets rested against Cardiff. Mane should be fine, and I think Firmino should probably be absolutely fine as well. And I just think, like I said, you want those players to start firing. Ideally, you want at least 2 of them to maybe pick up 2 goals in this game or something like that. I'm really looking at hopefully getting a thrashing for this one, and I think hopefully most of the goals come from that front 3. A few of them do need a little bit of confidence, and I feel like this could really be the game for them to get it. So taking a look at Red Star Belgrade then, obviously we don't know a huge amount about them because they play in the Serbian League, and I'm not sure there's many casual Serbian League fans out there. I'm fairly sure you can't actually watch it in England, so please don't berate me for my lack of knowledge on Red Star Belgrade. But what I can say is I did see them against PSG in the last game of the Champions League, and I'll be honest, they were really, really bad. And I know there's all of this controversy about potential max fixing and how apparently they might have fixed it so they lost by 5 goals. But even so, they just look dreadful. And I feel like that is an incredibly encouraging sign, because that game is very much the model that you'd expect this game to follow, because it's Red Star away from home against the European powerhouse, a team that has a really, really potent attack and a team that they kind of accept that they're probably going to get thrashed by. So I feel like we just need to hope that they show up with a similar kind of performance, because, you know, the problem that I think they have is that they just aren't capable of parking the bus, and obviously they aren't good enough to go toe-to-toe with a side like Liverpool or PSG or even Napoli, especially away from home. And, you know, things will probably be different away from home. I think that away game against Red Star will be a much more difficult. I think we saw when Napoli went there for the first game of the group stage, they got a 0-0 draw, and Red Star, I think, actually fought through that game pretty well. So that will be a different kettle of fish. But I think away from home, they just don't really know how to set themselves up tactically. In terms of their part of the bus strategy, they're always either playing too high a line, which I think if Liverpool attack quickly, and that's why I want players like Salah, Firmino and Mane on the pitch, because I want to see them breaking the lines quickly and trying to get those kind of counter-attack goals that they were so good at last season. If you attack quickly, then their defence is way too high up. And I think a lot of this does come from the fact that they don't normally park the bus in their domestic games, because they are one of, if not the best side in Serbia. So they're not used to sitting back and absorbing pressure. They're used to being the team that has all the ball, the team that dominates the game, and the team that by and large wins most of the games at a canter. So they're just not used to setting up in this way. So they either play that really high line that they really shouldn't be doing, or when they do try and get players back in the box and try and pack those key areas, they just look so static. You look at the goals PSG scored, they basically walk through that Red Star defence like they're a bunch of statues. And obviously they could put in a much better performance against us on Wednesday night. That could have been a one-off. You only have to look at the games we had against Maribor, where we absolutely thrashed them and they were terrible against us in the first game when we beat them 7-0. And then even though we beat them 3-0 in the next game, they were a completely different prospect. They worked out how to set themselves up. They were so much better defensively, and they did actually frustrate Liverpool for the first 45 minutes of that game. So it wouldn't be a huge surprise if Red Star set up a lot better than they did against PSG, but I certainly think the signs were there that they will be there for the taking in defensive terms. I think the one thing that Liverpool do have to watch out for is, like I said, because they are the best team in Serbia and they're so used to dominating games and attacking so much, they do have a quite sporadic attacking threat. You know, in that game against PSG, while they were pretty poor for most of the way through, when they did score their goal, it did actually come from some pretty nice play. So if we aren't doing the business at their end of the pitch, then they could quite easily counter-attack on us, get a goal, and then sit back and try and hold out for a 1-0 win or a 2-1 win or a 1-1 draw or something like that. So I think that is something Liverpool do have to be careful of, and that's one of the reasons why I think, even though they are lesser opposition and we've got to think about rotation, I'd still go with a first-choice defence for this game, just to be careful. But I think all things considered, this is a game that Liverpool should be absolutely winning at a canter. I personally am really looking forward to it, partially because I have managed to get tickets for the game. I'm sitting in what is technically the away end, which is going to be a little bit weird. I feel like that's almost a unique experience. I can't think of the last time Liverpool did anything like that. So I'll be doing a post-match video, hopefully outside the ground after the game, depending on how good the phone signal is out there, because I'm going to try and get the video uploaded as soon as possible. Hopefully that won't be out too late after the game, and I'll let you guys know how it went, and of course what it was like sitting in the away end in Anfield, and whether that was a weird experience or indeed a very, very fun one. But apart from that, thank you guys very, very much for watching this video. If you did enjoy this video, then why not give it a like? If you're new around here as well, hit that subscribe button there. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days. Don't forget to follow at LIVRSB Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll see you on Wednesday night for the post-match reaction after the game against Red Star Belgrade. Until then, bye for now.